This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
After a delightful sports weekend between the NBA playoffs, the F1 race in Miami, the NASCAR race, which was a thriller in Kansas last night, we get a pretty fun slate of baseball for today. I've got numbers I like in the moneyline market, in the strikeout market, and a home run prop that I like as well. We're going to run through those for today and get you ready to hopefully start your week off on a profitable note. Welcome on into Covering the Spread. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sanas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire, here to break down Monday's MLB slate, letting you know where I'm seeing value across the board over at FanDuel Sportsbook. And again, identifying spots where I see value for tonight. We'll also go through last week's recommendations from here on the show, whether it be golf, Kentucky Derby, racing stuff. We'll go through all that and recap how the bets went here on the show from last week. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. We have 5 shows coming up across this week, so search for Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. Hit subscribe, and if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. The NBA playoffs are in full swing. You can get all the action right from first tip with FanDuel. Right now, all customers can get a no-sweat same-game parlay every weekend when you bet the NBA playoffs. That's right. Just place a 3+ leg same-game parlay or same-game parlay plus on any NBA playoff game, and you'll get bonus bets back if you don't win. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Head to the FanDuel app or get a no-sweat same-game parlay every weekend of the NBA playoffs. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG. In Massachusetts, hope is here. GamblingHelplineMA.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. In New York, 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. In Connecticut, 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. In Wyoming and Kansas, 1-800-522-4700. Or in Kansas, ksgamblinghelp.com. Louisiana is 1-877-770-STOP. In Maryland, mdgamblinghelp.org. And in West Virginia, go to 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Let's dig in now to this MLB slate for today over at FanDuel Sportsbook. We got 2 money lines, 3 strikeout props, and a home run prop that I like for today. Let's begin things off with the money lines. And the first one that stands out to me is the Royals taking on the White Sox. The Royals money line right now at FanDuel Sportsbook is plus 114. You can get plus 115 elsewhere. I think there is value in that number with the Royals for tonight. Now, the White Sox have been pesky recently. I had a couple of Twins money lines against them in that series. Did not go super well. And the Royals, honestly, pretty pathetic offensively, especially against righties. Facing Dylan Cease for tonight, and this active roster has just a 77 WRC plus against righties. That number is even lower before they had a matchup with the Oakland A's, and the A's cure all ills when it comes to opposing batting numbers. So the offense is pathetic, but I kind of think the White Sox offense might stink right now too, especially with Eloy Jimenez now being out due to an appendectomy. Dylan Cease, bit wary of him still. He did look better last time out because his velocity was higher. So that's been the one thing with Cease is the velo had been low all year. Last week it was better against the Twins, but still in that game, he let up 4 earned runs. He had 4 walks in that game across 5 innings. So I think the takeaway there was that despite having the velo being back last week, he still was not the 2022 version of Dylan Cease where he was just phenomenal and a disgusting pitcher. He could get back there again. I still think Dylan Cease is super talented, but with the White Sox losing, again, Jimenez here, another key piece of their offense, run support also going to be an issue. So I had the Royals as a slight favorite here, plus 114, pretty steep number for that. So take it with a grain of salt as always, but I do think there's value here. Do like the Royals, and we'll take their money line at plus 114 for tonight. Second money line I like is the Angels. They're currently plus 104 at FanDuel. Now, I would shop around on this number for a couple reasons. First one is you can still get a 110 out there somewhere. The other reason is this number has moved pretty steadily overnight. It was like minus 106 on the Angels money line earlier on. So it's pretty clear there's been some money coming in on the Astros right now, despite the splits of FanDuel Sportsbook saying most of the bets have been coming in on Los Angeles. So we've seen some movement towards the Astros, which means maybe you want to hold off and place this bet later on, see if you can get a better number at some point, because there's been some interest, it seems, from invested parties on the Astros side of things. I'm going to take it at plus 104. Again, check around for plus 110 because I've got decent value there. Again, the Angels, slight favorites for me. And that's despite my not being super high on Patrick Sandoval. I've been annoyed with what he's been doing so far this year. He's not getting nearly as many strikeouts as he did in the past. Instead, he's been kind of pitching to contact, but inducing weak contact. I grew up watching the 2000 Twins where that was like their philosophy and it didn't work. So I hate this approach. I think it is counterintuitive. You know, the best ball in play is no ball in play. So it's odd that he's doing this. And I don't like what Sandoval's done. And as a result, my numbers are, I thought, going to be lower on the Angels. But instead, even with a lower number on Sandoval, I do still show value here. The Astros better right now against lefties and righties offensively, but their small sample WRC plus against lefties still just 98. So again, I'd monitor this market, see if you can potentially get a better number than plus 104 at some point, because we have seen some interest in the Astros here. But if you have to take 104 and make that the best number you can get, I think it's a value. So the Angels, slight favorites for me. I will take the plus 104. So the two money lines I like here, Angels plus 104, Royals plus 114. As always, make sure you're shopping around to get the best numbers on those. Let's dig in now to the strikeout department, starting off with a revenge game for tonight. And I think that FanDuel may be underselling the value of a revenge game for Zach Gallen facing off with his former team, the Miami Marlins. Gallen's strikeout prop is 6.5, so a big number, but just minus 104 on the over. And I want to take the over there on Gallen for tonight. Again, revenge game narrative, the biggest thing here. Nothing else matters. It's all about the revenge game. Hypothetically, if you were not sold by just a revenge game, let's talk about what else makes Gallen attractive in this spot. He has been disgusting to open this year. 35% strikeout rate, 2.47 skill interactive ERA. And the reason I'm focusing on that is because he changed the way he's throwing his slider, where he was classified as a cutter previously, now classified as a slider because it's a bit slower, a bit sweepier, and it's clearly working. Facing the Marlins here, they have an active roster strikeout rate of 23.9% against righties so far this year, so they're striking out plenty. They don't walk a lot, which means they don't have super drawn-out plate appearances, and they're just kind of not great overall, which means Gallen should be able to go pretty deep in this game. If he goes deep in this game, with how well he is pitching right now, I feel pretty good about his odds going over 6.5 strikeouts. Gallen has gone over this number in 5 out of 7 starts so far this year. If you look at just the 3 home starts, and this game is in Arizona for tonight, he has had double digits all 3 times. So I have Gallen projected for 8.5 strikeouts. It's not like the average number. I know my strikeout projections look a little bit different than the way they may work. Kind of assumes things go well, and then I can use that, plug that in and see, okay, 8.5 strikeouts, how often do they go over this number, stuff like that. So it's not like an average or anything like that, but 8.5 strikeout projection for Gallen for tonight. And he's at 6.5 right now on this number. So I think at minus 104 to go over, I think that makes a lot of sense. Zach Gallen to me over 6.5 strikeouts, a pretty fun way to get exposure to, again, revenge game narrative tonight for Zach Gallen. Elsewhere on the board, liking 1 under here for tonight, that is on Jon Gray. Jon Gray taking on the Seattle Mariners on the road. And Gray's strikeout prop right now at FanDuel Sportsbook, under 5.5 has moved quite a bit, so jump on this when you can. He was plus 108 to go over under 5.5 earlier this morning. He's now minus 110. So very clear there's been interest on the Jon Gray under here. Even at minus 110, though, I think that's a great number because he has been well below this number for a pretty long time. Gray has had 5 straight starts of 4 strikeouts and fewer. And I believe he's had exactly 2 strikeouts in 4 straight. That seems odd, given that last year Gray did get a good number of strikeouts, but he's leaning less than his slider. And his slider is a good strikeout pitch for him. And his usage on that slider, his last time out, was the lowest it has been all year. So it's down overall this year, lowest it's been all year last time out. That's a pretty big red flag. Instead, he's throwing more changeups, and the changeup not as big of a strikeout pitch for John Gray. So fewer sliders. The velocity on that slider is down as well, and throwing more changeups, which is not a great thing in terms of strikeouts. It's led to fewer strikeouts so far this year. Now goes on the road to face the Mariners. The Mariners do strike out. Their strikeout rate against righties is about 25%. So it makes sense that this number would be elevated from where Gray has been so far this year. But he's on the road. He's struggling. He's not using his best pitch right now. I think the under makes a lot of sense. So again, it has moved quite a bit. I would not be shocked if this actually goes down a full strikeout at some point. But under 5.5, I think I'd be willing to take this pretty far. Minus 140 or so would still be fine by me. So it has moved, which is a bummer, but I still think even at minus 110, Gray under 5.5 strikeouts does work. The final strikeout prop I like for tonight is one final over. That's for Anthony DeSclafani, and DeSclafani's been pretty good to me so far this year in terms of strikeout props. Not go over last week despite going like 8 innings, which was impressive. He had just 3 strikeouts in that game, but his number here today, 4.5 strikeouts, plus 110 in the over. I do like that for DeSclafani. Now, DeSclafani is not back to what he was pre-2022 in terms of velocity, but his velocity this year is better than it was last year. And as a result, his strikeout rate is up to 20.8%. His whiff rate is not super high, which means that maybe there could be a reduction in that strikeout rate eventually, but it's probably not going to come down too much from where it is right now. DeSclafani also does not walk anybody, which is why he can go super deep in games. Mentioned before, he went 8 innings last time out. So even with DeSclafani not being a high strikeout pitcher, he has gone over 4.5 strikeouts in 4 out of 6 starts thus far, including all 3 he has made at home, which is where he is for tonight. He's facing the Nationals. They are a low strikeout team against righties for sure, but even with that, I think this number is a bit low on DeSclafani. So DeSclafani needs to get 5 strikeouts here to hit the over on plus 110. I think that makes a lot of sense, in large part because I just think he'll face a lot of batters in this game. I think he'll go pretty deep into this one, and as a result of that, I think DeSclafani makes a lot of sense. So Anthony DeSclafani, over 4.5 strikeouts, plus 110. I haven't projected for, let me check here, 5.2 strikeouts for tonight. So plus money in the over makes a lot of sense. DeSclafani, plus 110 over 4.5. John Gray, under 5.5 at minus 110. And Zach Gallen, over 6.5 at minus 104, the strikeout recommendations for tonight. The final one is a home run prop, and this one is in the A's versus Yankees game to start things off. We've seen some movement towards the A's money line. They were plus 190 this morning. They're now plus 172. So we'll see here if the strikeout numbers have moved. They have a bit, but not too much. The strikeout prop I like is Jesus Aguilar at plus 430. It was plus 440. So again, there has been some interest here on Aguilar, but I still like it at plus 430 right now. Facing Nestor Cortes. And Cortes, he has this really good cutter. And he has ebbs and flows with his cutter. Sometimes cuts back on it. Sometimes throws it more. Recently, the past 5 starts, Cortes has thrown it more. So his first start didn't throw it a ton. He's been around 25% across his past 5 starts. And that's a good pitch for him. It leads to strikeouts. But in that 5-start sample, his fly ball rate is 70%. So a lot of fly balls in the Yankee Stadium, that can sometimes get you in trouble. He's facing Jesus Aguilar here, again, plus 430 to go deep. He has a 207 ISO so far this year, and that's coming primarily while playing in Oakland, which is not great for fly balls, not great for offense. Aguilar this year, 52% fly ball rate. Last year, his numbers against lefties are pretty poor, but he's a big guy, hits for power in general. Facing a lefty right here, I think intuitively we'd expect over a larger sample Aguilar to be a pretty powerful guy against lefties. He gets that here against a guy who leans on fly balls a lot. So Aguilar plus 430 to go deep. I think that makes a lot of sense. Brett Rooker has been outstanding so far this year. He's plus 350 as well. Consider that, but I think the number on Aguilar is better. So we'll go with a Jesus Aguilar at plus 430 to go deep today for the A's. And again, there's been some interest in the A's money line, as that one was plus 190, now down to plus 172 there. That's going to wrap up the MLB recommendations for today. Back again tomorrow. We'll talk about some basketball and some golf with Brandon Gadula. Before we close up for today, though, got to go back through the bet recommendations for last week and do the transparency section of the show for today. Our guest for the Kentucky Derby was Christina Blacker. You can find her on Twitter at ChristinaFDTV. Of course, you can find her on FanDuel TV as well. When we were talking Kentucky Derby, it was before Forte withdrew. We talked about Angel Empire at 8-1 as the win bet. That was her favorite horse to win. Once Forte had to withdraw, Angel of Empire became the favorite at 7-2. They finished third, so not quite there, but she did pinpoint which one would move up should Forte withdraw, so good read by Christina there. Other horse she mentioned was Derma Sotogake at 10-1. They were 8-1 after Forte withdrew. They finished sixth, so really tough week at Churchill Downs with all the issues they had there with all the horses, but hopefully they can get that straightened out. We'll talk to Christina again before the Preakness to get a read on that one as well. Brandon Gadula was on with us to talk some golf for the Wells Fargo Championship. You can find Brandon on Twitter at Gadula13. Wyndham Clark won the event. Wyndham Clark was on the bet slip for Brandon, but not for the full event. It was a first-round leader bet at 85-1. He was 2 strokes off the lead after the first round, so didn't hit that. Other first-round leader was Keegan Bradley at 60 plus 60-1 for Brandon. Couldn't quite hit that either, but at least it was on Wyndham Clark, and even didn't lead to a profit there. Good read for him on Clark. Other outrights Brandon did like were Patrick Cantlay 15-1, Tony Finau 17-1, Tyrrell Hatton 48-1, and Sahith Theegala at 50-1. Hatton did finish in a tie for third. I believe he was tied for the lead entering the weekend. So he golfed pretty well, but couldn't quite get over the hump there for Hatton finishing third. Brandon did hit a positional bet. He had KH Lee top 20 at plus 450. Lee finished 8th. So a full cash there and a pretty easy one at that. Other finish bet was Tom Kim top 10 at 6-1. Kim finished 23rd. So a hit on KH Lee. Other close ones for Brandon. A good call to be on Clark. Good call to be on Hatton. Just not the right markets for those two guys specifically. We had Austin Cass on last week to talk EPL. You can find Austin on Twitter at Austin Cass. The one EPL bet he liked was Man City over 2.5 goals at minus 164 against Leeds. Man City played well, and they played most of their key guys. The problem was they got up 2-0 right away, and they were able to coast to a 2-1 victory. I think if they had gotten more push from Leeds, maybe they would have tried more. But with the Champions League match coming up, they had their actual guys playing. Maybe they thought, okay, we can coast here, send this one in for a win. So they stayed at 2-1. Didn't get the over 2.5 at minus 164. The early lead there may have actually worked a bit against them. The one still pending for Austin, Man City plus 110 against Real Madrid, and then Inter minus 120 in the tie no bet market for the UCL semifinals tomorrow and Wednesday. I had a pretty frustrating week in racing for multiple reasons. F1, it was just the recommendations didn't go great. It was Lance Stroll T6 at minus 105, Nico Hülkenberg top 10 at plus 250. Stroll struggled all weekend for some reason, qualified 18th, never made up enough ground to get close. They tried to conserve tires in Q1. Didn't work out. Fernando Alonso barely made it through. Stroll did not. So their gamble did not pay off. He never really got close. His teammate finished on the podium. That probably tells you that the car was not bad. It was just the driver didn't perform super well. As for Hülkenberg, he was fast in FP1, but then he crashed at the end of the session. And then he was decently good in FP3, qualified 12th, and despite that, Hülkenberg closed at, I think, minus 120 to finish inside the top 10. So got it at plus 250, closed at minus 120. That's pretty nice. Hülkenberg started the race on hard tires and seemed to be running pretty well, but once he pitted onto the mediums, he could not make his way past traffic. So he missed as well. That was pretty frustrating. I thought at the beginning he was running pretty well. I think he was running 11th or so on the hard tire. Thought that'd be positioning him for a good run late, but couldn't quite get there. So Hülkenberg and Stroll both missed. NASCAR was frustrating because I was close to a nice day and couldn't quite get there, about a half a lap away from a nice day. I had Ross Chastain T10 at minus 143. Chastain finished 5th, so that hit, but it's minus 143. Kind of expect that to hit. AJ Allmendinger top 10 at 5-1. He finished 14th, never really that close to cashing that one, so that was not the close call. The close call was Kyle Larson to win at 5-1. He got spun very early in the race and went to the back, worked his way forward, and took the lead on lap 221. That was the final stage. Larson ran away from the pack, but got about a 1 second lead. He led the next 46 laps. The problem was there were 47 laps left to go. Denny Hamlin caught Larson with about 10 to go and got stuck behind him. Hamlin had the better car. I think we can say that pretty definitively. There were a couple times where I thought Hamlin would pass him, just couldn't quite get the job done. Then the last lap, Larson looked like he got a little tight, may have scrubbed the wall. Hamlin got into him a bit, but it was a clean pass. I mean, like, he hit him, but it wasn't dirty or anything. It was just, Hamlin won. Larson finished second. It was close, and I still love the race. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought Hamlin deserved to win based on the fact he was the better car those final 40 or so laps. Just couldn't get past Larson. Eventually did. So I know people were mad at Hamlin for it. I wasn't personally, even though it lost me money. Would have been nice to win the bet, but I didn't think it was dirty by any means. Just a bummer to miss out on some money there with Kyle Larson. So hopefully you had Larson podium or something like that instead. I had under 11.5 to win, the car number under 11.5, so I was okay regardless, but would have been nice to add the Larson outright as well. That is all that we have here for today on Covering the Spread. I want to thank you all, as always, for tuning in and remind you once again to make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. Also, check us out over on the FanDuel YouTube page. Just go to the FanDuel YouTube page, hit subscribe there, and if you like what you hear, give us a thumbs up on YouTube or leave us a 5-star rating over on Apple Podcasts. If you've got any questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes. JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. I want to thank you all for tuning in today. Good luck to you with your MLB bets for tonight. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow to talk about some PGA and NBA with Brandon Gandula. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.